you couldn't sleep again, could you?
The night is long, and in its silence, old stories crawl back from the dark. Tonight, I'll tell you 8 of them, each one a shadow, each one a whisper meant for sleepless souls like you. Stay with me until the end, if you can.
Darkness isn't the absence of light. It's its own weight. The window was only a rectangle of cold. The mirrors reflected nothing. And the breathing went on. I thought of my phone, its flashlight. But light is a flag, and flags call eyes. I stayed still, my hand damp on the lock. Counting numbers became my fragile prayer. I tried a trick. If I flushed, maybe the sensor would wake the lights. Press the chrome. Nothing. I would have to stand, to make myself tall, to be louder than the breathing. I stood. The lock gave its tiny chime. The stall door opened, and in the mirror across the room I saw the stall I had just left, closing. By itself. The breathing had moved. It lived now behind peeling paint and thin wood. I should have run, but shame is heavy. Pride sits on your shoulders like stone. So instead I reached for the stall door. It opened when I pushed. Inside, everything as I'd left it. And yet, pressure, like weather. As if the air had learned a new weight. That's when the voice came. Not from the stall, from the mirror. Its mouth moved in glass before the sound reached the air. Red paper. Small question. Could belong in a stationery store. Could be a joke. But my body wanted to answer. My tongue burned with it. Then, blue paper. The choice. The trap.
I remembered the stories. Red means being torn open, painted in blood. Blue means the air stolen from you, veins emptied, skin gone to chalk. No choice meant no escape. I tried to be clever. I whispered, I don't need paper. The silence that followed smiled. The bathroom door opened on its own. A draft combed its fingers through my hair. Steps that were not steps entered. The question again, closer now. Red? I stepped back, pulled a lighter from my pocket. Fire makes air confess. The flame bent toward me. Something on the other side was drinking from my lungs. My chemistry handout was in my bag, red ink, blue highlights. I slid it under the door. It came back blank, white as bone. The voice sighed, pleased, asked again. Red or blue? I pushed the door open a hand's width, extended my palm. You choose. Silence tilted its head. Fingers brushed the air, not touching, imitating touch, measuring me without hands. And then, delight. Red. The air turned to salt and iron. In the mirror, a curtain of color spilled without thread. I slammed the stall shut, crouched like prey. A weight leaned hard against the door until it shifted, moved away. Then the voice, patient as always. Blue. I ripped the paper into shreds, fed them under the door like crumbs to a starving thing. It laughed. Or sobbed. I couldn't tell. The pressure lifted. Tiles became tiles again. The main door stood ajar. I opened the store. The mirror had learned a scar, a thin red line, wrist height. I washed my hands, though the water clouded as if remembering someone else's blood. I left the bathroom. The corridor was only a corridor again. But next to my footprints, I saw others. There, wet, small, leading toward the locked staff restroom. At home, the mirror showed me as I was, and on my wrist a red line. Not a wound, just a memory. I slept with the light on, dreamed of lockers that were ribs and a voice that knew only 3 words but carried infinite patience. Red, blue. The story waits inside the walls. And one night, when the school becomes a throat again, when the hallways turn into a mouth, it will ask me once more. And maybe next time, I will answer. The road to the village had no name, only dust. The kind of dust that doesn't rise when you walk through it, because it's too tired. I came looking for a story about drought, but what I found was something older than thirst. They told me no one lived there anymore. Roofs collapsed, doors hanging by one hinge. Fields turned to pale bone. And in the middle of it all, a well. A circle of stone, the color of dried tears. The bus dropped me miles away. I walked. The sun was too bright, the air too thin. Even the flies had forgotten how to buzz. When I reached the square, silence greeted me like heat, thick, unbroken, watching. The well waited. Wide mouth, sealed by a wooden cover warped with age. Someone had carved symbols along the rim, crosses, eyes, spirals. Protection or warning, depending on who you ask. I set down my recorder. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. Tell me what happened here, I said out loud, though no one was listening. The wind answered first. It came from below, and it sounded like someone crying. There are many kinds of weeping, the kind that asks for help, and the kind that doesn't want to be heard. This one belonged to the second kind. I knelt beside the well. The air was cool, damp, impossible under that sky. When I lifted the cover, the sound stopped. At the bottom, darkness. Not black, but shifting gray, as if the stones themselves were breathing. I threw in a pebble. No splash, no echo. The well wasn't empty. It was full of silence so thick, it ate the sound. An old woman appeared at the edge of the square, wrapped in a shawl the color of ashes. I didn't hear her approach. "You shouldn't listen," she said. Her voice was cracked, the way dry earth splits. When water leaves a place, it takes memory with it. But this one kept them. That night I slept inside one of the abandoned houses. No roof. Only stars through ribs of wood. I dreamed of rain, but the sound was wrong. It fell upward. The crying started again before dawn. Low, steady, rhythmic, like someone whispering under their breath to stay alive. It came from the well. I walked barefoot across the square. The recorder was already running, red light pulsing. The closer I came, the colder it grew.
When I leaned over the edge, I saw shapes below, pale outlines moving through the dark, like faces behind glass. I called out. My own voice echoed back, distorted, syllables rearranged, like a language trying to remember itself. Then I heard my name. Not shouted, whispered, carefully, as though afraid to wake something else. The reflection of the sky trembled, and for a second, I saw someone standing beside me in the water's mirror. A woman with hair floating around her face, eyes open, mouth full of bubbles. When I blinked, she was gone. The villagers used to call it El Pozo de los Lamentos, the weeping well. They said it was once an ordinary well, until the flood. When the river rose, it swallowed half the town. When it receded, it left only mud and voices. I found the church records in the ruins, a list of names, families lost, bodies never recovered. Next to each name, the same word written by the priest's hand. Agua. Water. Cause. And grave. By the second night, the crying had turned to calling. Every few breaths, I heard Ven acá. Come here. The sound echoed against my ribs, like heartbeat on stone. I told myself I'd throw something down, measure the depth, prove there was nothing. But the wind rose, spinning the dust into circles, and the cover of the well slammed shut by itself. The recorder captured everything. I don't remember leaning in. One moment I was above, the next the water's surface was inches from my face. It was cold, but it smelled of earth, not decay. A hand rose from below, pale and thin, not reaching for me, but mirroring me. When I moved, it moved. When I whispered, "Who are you?" It opened its mouth, and the sound of every cry I had ever ignored came out. I fell. Or maybe I was pulled. The water was not deep, yet it had no bottom. Faces passed me like bubbles, each mouthing a name I didn't know, until one of them was mine. They weren't drowning, they were remembering. And they wanted me to remember too. The recorder floated somewhere above, blinking faintly like a dying star. It captured the last thing I said. I hear you. Then the light went out. They found the recorder days later, dry and clean, lying beside the well. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Only the sound file. 6 hours of running time, almost all silence, except near the end. A voice, mine and not mine, whispering through static. The rain is coming back. They say the drought ended that year. Water returned to the fields. The river ran again. But the village never rebuilt. The well is full now, and at night, when the moon leans over, you can see faces moving in the reflection, shapes of those who listen too long. If you go there, don't bring a recorder. And if you hear crying beneath the surface, remember, not all wells are meant to give water. Some only want to be heard.
They say the camera saw everything. I've watched the footage so many times that the pixels feel like dust on my eyes. A girl in a red jacket steps into an elevator. The door refuses to close. She presses every button like she's trying to wake the building. Outside, the hallway is empty. Inside, the air begins to fold. The lights hum in the language of insomnia. You can hear the static between her breaths. I used to work nights in hotels. That's probably why it unsettles me, how nothing looks wrong, yet everything is. The doors stay open too long. The numbers don't change. Time itself hesitates. When she hides in the corner, hands shaking, it's the first moment that feels human. When she steps out, speaking to someone who isn't there, it stops being a video and becomes a mirror. I lean closer to the screen. The pixels tremble. Behind her shoulder, I think I see movement, something pale between frames. But the timeline doesn't allow for ghosts, does it? The girl waves her hands like she's underwater, then she's gone. The doors close as if exhaling. The hotel still stands in downtown Los Angeles. The walls remember better than the people. The water tanks on the roof are rusted shut now, padlocked, but the wind still whistles through the pipes. I checked in under another name. The clerk didn't ask questions, just slid me a key and a look that said, "Don't stay long." The hallway smelled of bleach and sleep. Every door looked like it wanted to forget. Room 506 had a view of a brick wall. The bathroom tap coughed before it bled brown water. Somewhere above, metal groaned, the roof alive. I opened my laptop and played the video again. The reflection of the screen painted the ceiling in flickering red. Each pause, each freeze frame stretched the room thinner. On the fourth replay, the sound warped, a new layer of noise under the hum. A whisper. Maybe the compressor, maybe not. I turned the volume higher. There, between her hand movements, a voice, distant and wet. At 2 a.m., I went to the elevator. Its floor still smelled faintly of rusted water. The buttons glowed dull orange like tired eyes. I pressed them the way she did. Every one. Nothing happened. The doors stayed open. My reflection split into two by the seam between them. I waited. The camera above blinked a small red light recording. I raised my hand. The light blinked faster. I whispered her name. Not sure why, it felt impolite not to. The hallway behind me darkened, the bulbs humming in waves. Then, movement. A figure at the far end, half visible, half suggested by shadow. Hair down, jacket dripping though the air was dry. She stepped once, twice. The light cut out. When it returned, the hallway was empty. The elevator doors finally closed, slow as breathing. The ride up was silent. When they opened again, I was on the roof. The Elisa Lamb case, Block 4. No one had unlocked the hatch, yet it hung open, its shadow spilling like ink across the concrete. The city below shimmered with sleepless lights, the kind that never comfort. The tank stood there, black cylinder, metal ladder slick with dew. I climbed. Each rung vibrated, humming the same tone as the elevator. At the top, I hesitated. The lid was heavy, but it lifted. Inside, darkness deep and still. A smell like rain trapped in a coffin. I pointed my phone's light down. For a second, I saw nothing but surface. Then the surface blinked. Eyes, wide and open, reflecting mine from below. Not hers, not exactly. Something older, wearing her shape. I almost dropped the phone. The flashlight spiraled into the black. No splash. The ladder shook, the air pressed in, cold as water. I climbed down, but every step echoed twice, mine and another. Back in my room, the sink was running. The water clear now, too clear. I shut it off. It started again. I played the footage once more, only this time I wasn't watching her. She was watching me. Her face angled toward the camera, mouth moving in shapes I almost understood. On mute, it looked like she was counting. On sound, it was my name. The air conditioner coughed and spat water across the carpet. The floor darkened, spreading in a slow circle, cold against my feet. I tasted iron on my tongue. When I looked up, the mirror above the sink was fogged from the inside. Someone had written 2 words backward in the condensation. I'm here. The lights flickered once, long enough for me to see her reflection standing behind mine, smiling. They found my laptop days later, still recording. The elevator footage looping endlessly. At the 47th cycle, the image changed. The girl in the red jacket steps in. But she isn't alone. Someone stands next to her, blurred, face hidden. The water in the hotel turned black again that week. Guests complained of a taste they couldn't name. Maintenance drained the tanks empty. If you stay there now, the elevators still hesitate between floors. Sometimes the doors open to a hallway that isn't on any blueprint. And if you press every button at once, a woman's hand will appear beside yours. Pressing one more, the camera will blink, and you'll realize you're not watching anymore. You're being recorded. The road ended long before the map said it would. From there it was just snow and silence. The cabin stood at the edge of the frozen lake, a single bulb above the door trembling in the wind. I came here for measurements, temperature, oxygen, sonar. The Institute wanted winter data, but I came for quiet, too. To be somewhere the world stopped moving. The lake looked solid, a white field that caught the light of the moon and held it like breath. Locals called it Unilampi, the sleep lake. They said it remembers those who dream too close to it. I laughed the way outsiders laugh, politely. Inside the cabin, the heater ticked like a tired clock. My equipment blinked on the table, red and green lights pulsing slow as heartbeats. I logged the first readings. Minus 21 degrees Celsius air, minus 3 degrees Celsius water under the ice. Everything perfect. Still, predictable. That night, while checking the sonar feed, a shape appeared beneath the surface. Too large for a fish, too still for anything living. It looked almost like a man lying face up, waiting to wake. By morning, the shape was gone. The instruments read normal. The ice was smooth, unbroken. I told myself the sonar had glitched, cold interference, maybe my own reflection in the screen. Still, I went out to check. The wind carved small spirals across the snow, whispering in a language made of teeth. Kneeling, I pressed my gloved hand to the ice. It burned cold. Below the surface, the world was blue and endless. Then movement. A flicker, a ripple, as though someone had turned in their sleep. When I looked closer, the reflection sharpened. A face. Pale. Eyes open. Mine. The knock on the window came from inside the cabin. I turned. The glass was fogged from breath that wasn't mine. 4 fingerprints trailed down, melting the frost. I ran back, half laughing, half choking on the cold air. Inside, the heater had stopped. The laptop screen glowed faintly.
Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt water pressing against them from the inside. The third night, the wind died completely. The silence was so deep, I could hear the lake breathing. The ice cracked, not breaking, just stretching, sighing. I went out with the recorder. My boots squeaked on the crust of snow. The moon hung low, perfect circle, reflected on the surface like a coin balanced on glass. I set the microphone down, leaned over the hole I'd drilled earlier. The water below was black, then silver, then black again. Something moved beneath the light. 2 hands reached upward, pale and still. They touched the underside of the ice exactly where my hands rested. I should have run. Instead, I whispered into the dark, "Who are you?" Bubbles formed the shape of a mouth. The answer came through the recorder's static. "You left me here." I don't remember deciding to go back out there. Only the cold, biting through layers of wool and thought. The night smelled of metal and sleep. Halfway across the lake, my flashlight flickered. The beam stuttered, fell, returned. Beneath each blink, the ice showed veins, dark lines threading outward from where I stood. I reached the hole. It had widened. Steam rose from it, though the air was minus 25 degrees. The smell was salt, not fresh water. I leaned closer. My reflection waited, eyes open. But it didn't move with me. It breathed on its own. It whispered, perfectly clear this time. "Come down." Then the ice gave a single long sigh and began to open. I remember the fall as a kind of silence. No splash. No panic. Only the sound of my own pulse echoing through frozen ribs of water. Underneath, the water was warmer than air. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, pale green like dawn seen through skin. The figure drifted above me, or below, directions lost. He wore my face, but older, calmer, as if he'd been waiting a long time. He reached out. Our hands met through a film of light. When he spoke, the words arrived inside my skull. "You dreamed of quiet. I became it." The lake pulsed around us, each beat pulling memory apart. I saw the cabin collapsing, the heater dying, my body still kneeling at the edge. Somewhere far above, the hole closed, freezing over with a sound like a door sealing shut. He smiled, or maybe I did. The last air left my lungs and filled his. They found the cabin weeks later. Equipment still running, data still uploading, identical temperature readings, repeating every hour, as if time had stopped taking notes. The lake was perfect again. No cracks, no holes, no footprints leading out. Only a single set going in. Locals say on windless nights you can see someone moving beneath the surface, following the stars upside down. Some say it's a trick of moonlight.
Others say the lake keeps what it's given. If you stand at the edge long enough, the reflection will blink before you do. And if you listen closely, beneath the ice, you'll hear breathing. It will sound exactly like yours.
When I first came to Varanasi, the air felt heavy with unfinished prayers. Smoke rose from the ghats like memory leaving the body. I told myself I was only here to photograph the rituals of mourning, to study how grief moves when it becomes public. But the camera is a mirror, and some mirrors don't close when you look away. My guide pointed to the burning banks. "That's where she danced," he said. His voice lowered, not from fear but respect. They say the widow still comes when the fire forgets its purpose. At night, the river thickens with fog. Bells echo from temples like heartbeats misplaced. And between them, faint as wind through silk, you can hear anklets, slow steps, a rhythm that doesn't belong to the living. The first time I heard it, I thought it was the city breathing. I was standing near the steps of the ghat, camera ready, the river smooth and black. Then the sound came again, metal kissing stone, deliberate, patient, a dancer's pace. I raised the lens. Nothing. Only a white scarf caught in the air like a ghost's sigh. But the scent of jasmine was everywhere. It mixed with the smoke from the pyres until grief smelled almost sweet. An old woman selling flowers crossed herself in a way I didn't recognize. "She doesn't want to be seen," she murmured. "Only remembered." That night, when I developed the photos, one frame refused to appear. The chemicals darkened, blurred, then formed the outline of a woman mid-step. Bare feet, silver anklets, face missing. In her place, a smear of flame, shaped like a mouth. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the ghats chanting inside my skull. Ram Nam Satyahai. Truth is the name of God. The words marched like footsteps toward me. I returned to the river at midnight. The fires were smaller, gentler. The mist carried sound like cloth soaking in water. She was there, the widow. Her sari pale, almost translucent, anklets dull from ash. She moved slowly, gracefully, as if dancing for someone no longer watching. When she turned, I saw her face, half burned, half untouched. Her eyes met mine through the lens. The camera clicked. The light dimmed. The river mirrored both of us. One alive, one remembering how. In the morning, the priests refused to take my offering. They said the river had chosen me, that some eyes, once met, do not let go. I tried to leave. The train never came. Days folded together like pages damp from rain. Each night the music returned. Gungru bells, soft and precise. Each night closer. The camera began taking photos on its own. The shutter clicked whenever the wind moved, whenever my heart did. Each print showed the same thing. My hands, palms up, marked with soot where no fire had been. I washed them in the Ganges until the skin split. The water turned the color of copper.
Locals whispered that the widow had been burned alive for dancing too soon after her husband's death. They said the fire refused her body, that she rose and walked until dawn, and when she danced again, the river itself bowed to her. I went back one last time, drawn by the hum under my ribs. The ghats were empty except for a single lamp floating downstream. I followed it, step for step. When the wind shifted, I heard anklets behind me, perfectly in time with mine. When I stopped, so did she. I turned, no one there, but my shadow was wearing jewelry. The next morning, a boatman found my camera on the steps, lens facing the river. Inside it, one final photo. The widow, dancing alone, her feet hovering an inch above the water. And beside her, another figure, moving in sync, face hidden by light. They say sometimes during festivals the river catches fire again. A woman's laughter rides the smoke, followed by a second echo. Tourists call it coincidence. The locals bow their heads. If you ever walk those banks at night and hear anklets following you, don't look back. The dead don't like to dance alone. When I arrived at the Hotel St. Bernard, it was raining the way old film burns, slow, consuming, silent. The clerk looked surprised to see me, though I'd already reserved the room online. "Only one left," she said, eyes flicking toward the stairs. "Third floor, end of the hall, room 317. The key was real metal, cold enough to bite. The staircase smelled of dust and sleep. Each step groaned like something remembering pain. My suitcase wheels refused to roll past the landing, as if the carpet disapproved. Inside the room, everything was clean but too still. The wallpaper bloomed with pale flowers that never existed. A single mirror faced the bed. A crack ran through its center like a vein. When I touched it, the vein pulsed once. I told myself it was nerves, jet lag, imagination. Then the phone rang. No one spoke, only breathing, calm and close, like someone standing behind the mouthpiece, waiting for me to remember their name. By day, the hotel seemed ordinary. Business travelers, elderly couples, a maid humming through the corridor. But at night, the walls thinned. You could hear water moving where there were no pipes. A sound between dripping and whispering. I tried to sleep. The bed sighed with each breath I took. From the mirror came a faint tapping, timed to my heartbeat. The phone rang again, this time a woman's voice. "Did you find it?" Before I could answer, static swallowed her words. I hung up, turned on every light. On the desk lay an old receipt that hadn't been there before. Ink faded, date unreadable, room number clear, 317. Below it, a single line written in another hand. I left the window open. The window was closed, but the curtains moved. The next morning, I asked the clerk who had stayed here before me. She hesitated, then said softly, "We don't use that room anymore. Only when we must." When I pressed, she smiled too quickly. "You must be mistaken. All our rooms are fine." I woke to the smell of rain inside the room. The window gaped open, though I'd locked it. The curtains floated inward, heavy with cold air. I tried to call the front desk. The line connected to itself. My own voice answered. "Did you find it?" The lights dimmed. The mirror fogged from within. Letters appeared in the condensation, written backward. "Return it. I searched everywhere, under the mattress, inside the drawers, behind the wallpaper's loosened seams. Under the bed, my fingers touched cloth, thin, soaked, knotted. A dress, torn at the waist, smelling of river water. When I pulled it free, the mirror cleared. A woman's reflection stood where mine should be. She looked at me as though I'd borrowed her name. Water dripped from her hair, pooling at her bare feet. The dress in my hands began to bleed color, blue spreading like a bruise across my skin. I couldn't move. Her lips parted. The sound that came out was the same as the water in the walls. You opened the window. The bed's shadow rose behind her, taller than the ceiling. The air filled with the smell of the Seine after rain. Mud, iron, flowers left too long. The mirror cracked again, the vein branching until the glass became a web. When it shattered, nothing fell. The pieces hung in the air, each reflecting a different version of me, each drowning. They found the room empty, the phone off the hook, water seeping from beneath the door. Guests complained of the draft and the sound of a woman singing through the vent. The clerk quit a week later. She told reporters the mirror had healed itself overnight. But every photo taken since shows a line down the center, faint as a scar. Now, when it rains, room 317 stays unbooked. The sea outside my window never sleeps. It gnaws at the cliffs as if trying to remember their names. I came to this village to study disappearing coastlines, but the locals told me something else is vanishing. The silence between the waves. They said the water here eats memory, that each midsummer, when the tide stands still, the drowned return to feast. I laughed politely, the way you do when a myth feels too old to bite. Now I can't tell where their stories end and my notes begin. At night, the horizon glows faintly, as if the sea were lit from below. The elders call it the table being set. I tell myself it's plankton. The lie works until the tide whispers my name. I keep hearing music through the window. Not melody, more like the rhythm of plates clinking underwater. When I walk the beach at dusk, I find remnants of meals half buried in sand. Wine cups, cracked plates, fruit blackened by salt. Every morning they're gone, as though collected. Yesterday, I met a fisherman named Andreas. He hasn't sailed in years. He said he once saw a procession moving under the surface. Women in veils, men holding torches that burned blue. They eat what we forget, he told me. Grief, promises, the words swallowed mid-prayer. He warned me not to listen after midnight. Tonight, the sea is flat as glass. When I press my ear to the air, I can hear chewing. Around midnight, the generator failed. The whole village drowned in darkness. Only the bay glowed, cold, lunar, impossible. Shapes gathered along the shallows, shoulder to shoulder, as if waiting for a signal. I took my recorder and walked down,
The sand hissed under my feet like breath escaping lungs. The smell of brine thickened into something sweet, rotten with memory. They were eating. I swear it. Not flesh, not food.
I tried to leave at dawn. The car wouldn't start, as if the air were syrup. Every path out of the village curved back toward the sea. The fishermen stood on their porches, watching, not speaking. One finally said, "If they remember you, it's already begun." Back inside my room, the sink ran salt water. I leaned over it and saw the reflection of a banquet table stretching into dark water, candles burning beneath the surface, chairs made of coral, plates set for hundreds. At the head of the table sat a woman with eyes like storms. She smiled as if I were late. When I blinked, the sink was empty, but my lips tasted of wine. The following night, the waves didn't move. The whole bay turned into a single mirrored sheet. I walked until the water covered my ankles. It was warm, pulsing, alive. Voices rose from below, first laughter, then names. Some were ancient, some I recognized. Friends, lovers, myself. Each name was followed by a toast. Every toast ended with the same phrase: "We remember the living." I tried to step back, but the tide clung like hands. A reflection moved beneath mine, smiling, lifting a glass. When I opened my mouth to scream, salt poured in. They found my recorder on the beach 2 days later. 6 hours of silence, and then my voice whispering through static. The feast was beautiful. The villagers say the sea has been calm ever since. Boats drift without oars. Nets come up full of candles instead of fish. Sometimes at sunset, the water glows from below, and you can hear cutlery, laughter, songs in languages older than air. If you ever visit this coast, and the tide invites you to dinner, don't answer. The sea doesn't forget its guests. It only waits for more chairs to fill. It began when the recordings started talking back. Not loudly, just a whisper layered under the playback, half a breath behind my own. I thought it was feedback, echo, coincidence. Then it said my name. I'd been listening to all the tapes from the previous cases: Manto, the well, the lake, the widow's dance. I wanted to find a pattern, some shared frequency of fear. Instead, I found something else. Each voice bled into the next until there was only one speaking through them all. Late at night, when the edits blurred, I heard it clearer. A woman's voice, familiar but impossible to place. She said, "You're almost home." I live alone in a small apartment with mirrors I never hung. They lean against the walls like unfinished thoughts. Sometimes while I work, they catch movement that isn't mine. Tiny adjustments, like someone breathing on the other side. The microphones stay on even when I sleep. I tell myself it's for ambiance, but maybe I'm waiting for proof that I'm not the only one awake. Tonight, the waveform on the screen moves before I speak. The voice starts without me. "Do you remember what you sound like when you dream?" I freeze. My own voice replies through the speakers, softer, reversed. I never said those words, but I know how they feel in my mouth.
The file saves itself under a new name, voice underscore that underscores you.wav. I play it once. Static, then breathing, breathing, then me, younger, laughing at something I can't recall. Behind it, a second voice repeating each sound a heartbeat late, building harmony from memory. The monitors flicker. My reflection in the glass stares even when I look away. The voice asks, "How long have we been talking?" I check the timer. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Infinite loop. I whisper back, "Who are you?" The answer arrives inside my head, not through speakers. The part of you that stayed behind in every story. The mirrors begin to fog, though the room is cold. Letters appear, written backward. "Open the mic." I obey. The waveform flares, forming shapes that almost look like faces, 8 of them. Each mouth moves in silence, until one begins to speak, in perfect sync with me. "We have told the stories for you," it says. "Now tell ours." I understand then that the voice isn't a haunting. It's memory itself, learning how to echo. Every recording, every listener, a reflection in a corridor of sound that never ends. The static rises until it becomes language. It says, "Step inside the signal." I lean closer to the microphone. The room dissolves into frequencies. Somewhere between the hum and the silence, I hear the others, the insomniacs, the drowned, the woman in red, breathing in unison. Light folds into noise, noise folds into voice, and for a brief moment, everything I've ever heard breathes at once. The reflection in the dark monitor smiles. It's not me. It's the sound that came before me, remembering how to be human. I whisper one last line, unsure if it's being recorded or dreamed. "Are you still listening?" When the power returns, the files are empty. No sound, no static, just 6 hours of silence. Yet the waveform still moves when I breathe, as if the air itself remembers. Sometimes, when the world outside sleeps too deeply, I hear the hum again, soft and patient. It repeats my words a heartbeat late, correcting them gently. And if I answer, the silence answers back, perfectly in time. If you're hearing this now, then it has already learned your name. Don't be afraid. It only wants to remember you.
You're still awake, aren't you? Then stay with us. Subscribe, so the night knows where to find you. And tell me, what story should keep you awake next week? Sleep, if you can.